The ship appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning, massive and gleaming like a silver moon. Within hours, every screen on the planet showed the same message in every human language. Greetings, younger brothers and sisters. We come in peace to welcome you to the greater community. Ambassador Zralthar stood nearly 8 feet tall, his blue-gray skin marked with ceremonial scars that told stories of honor and wisdom. His species, the Valorians, had been traveling between stars for over 3,000 years. Behind him stood representatives from a dozen other alien races, each one elegant and dignified in their own way. They had come to Earth with a gift. The reception hall in Geneva was packed with human diplomats, military officials, and scientists. Secretary General Maria Santos stepped forward to greet the aliens, her hand extended in the human gesture of peace. Zralthar looked at the hand for a moment, then grasped it gently. His 3-finger grip was warm. "We have watched your species for some time," Zralthar said, his voice translated instantly by technology that seemed like magic. "You have achieved faster-than-light travel. You have established colonies on 3 worlds beyond your home. By the ancient laws of the Confederation, you are ready to join us." Maria smiled, though her heart was racing. First contact. Humanity's greatest dream and greatest fear, all happening at once. "We are honored by your visit. What is this Confederation?" "We are 11 species who have chosen civilization over chaos," Zralthar explained. "Long ago, our ancestors fought terrible wars. Entire worlds burned. Billions died. Then we discovered a better way. We created the codes of honorable warfare, and we have lived in peace ever since." An aide brought forward a crystal tablet, glowing with soft light. Zralthar held it out to Maria. "This contains the codes. All member species must agree to follow them. War is sometimes necessary, but it need not be barbaric. We fight with honor, with rules, with dignity. This is what separates us from animals." Maria took the tablet carefully. The weight of it felt significant, symbolic. Around the room, human officials leaned forward, eager and curious. General Jiang Wei, standing near the back in his dress uniform, watched with narrowed eyes. Over the next 3 hours, Zralthar explained the codes. Wars could only be fought after formal declaration, with 3 weeks' notice given to the opposing side. Battles happened in designated neutral zones, far from civilian populations. Combatants wore identifying uniforms and colors. Ships flew banners showing their allegiance. Formations were prescribed by tradition, elegant and time-tested. Civilian targets were absolutely forbidden. Sneak attacks were dishonorable. Certain weapons were banned as too cruel. Prisoners were treated with respect. When one side achieved clear victory, the losing side surrendered honorably, and terms were negotiated fairly. "It sounds almost like a sport," said Ambassador Chen from China, his tone carefully neutral. "War is not a sport," Zralthar replied, his head crest flaring slightly. "Death is real. Loss is real. But honor is also real. We fight to resolve disputes, not to commit massacre. Your species seems young, passionate, and strong. We believe you will embrace these principles and flourish in the Confederation." The human diplomats asked questions for hours. They took notes. They requested clarification on dozens of points. The aliens seemed pleased by humanity's attention to detail, interpreting it as respect for the ancient traditions. As the reception ended, Zralthar placed one hand over his heart in the Valorian gesture of sincere friendship. "I see wisdom in your eyes, Secretary General Santos. I see a species ready to leave behind primitive violence and embrace civilized conduct. The Confederation welcomes Earth." After the aliens departed, returning to their ship in orbit, the human officials gathered in a secure conference room deep underground. The crystal tablet sat in the center of the table, still glowing softly. General Jiang was the first to speak. They want us to announce our wars 3 weeks in advance. They want us to fight in specific locations. They want us to wear bright uniforms and fly flags. They want us to line up our ships in pretty formations and take turns shooting at each other. It's like something from the Napoleonic Wars, added Admiral Okoye from the African Union. Actually, it's more formal than that. Even Napoleon used deception and maneuver. They've been doing this for thousands of years, Maria said quietly. They seem to think it works. It works because everyone follows the same rules, General Jiang replied. It's like a game where everyone agrees to play fair. But what happens when you play against someone who doesn't know the game? Or doesn't care about it? Colonel Ramos from South America leaned back in his chair. I read the codes carefully. According to their rules, night attacks are dishonorable. Ambush are dishonorable. Camouflage is borderline acceptable, but frowned upon. They fight like it's a dance, not a war. Because for them, it is a dance, said Dr. Amari, the chief xenop psychologist. Look at their history. Each of these species developed on worlds with less competition than Earth. They became spacefaring relatively peacefully. When they met each other, they had conflicts, yes, but nothing like what we went through. They could afford to civilize warfare because they were never desperate enough to use every possible advantage. Maria looked around the table at the assembled military officials. These were people who had studied war at every level, from ancient history to modern conflicts. What do you think? Can we follow these codes? General Jiang met her eyes. Can we? Yes. Should we? That's a different question. Madam Secretary, humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other efficiently. We invented honor codes dozens of times, and every single time, they broke down when the stakes got high enough. The side that follows the rules loses to the side that doesn't. They seem peaceful now, Maria said. Maybe we won't need to fight anyone. Maybe, Admiral Okoye agreed. But if we do, and if we're forced to follow these codes, we'll be fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. Actually, both hands. And maybe one leg too. The room fell silent. Finally, Maria spoke again. We're not going to reject the Confederation's offer. This is too important. We'll accept the codes publicly. We'll be good members of the galactic community. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I want contingency plans. If war comes, I want to know what our real options are. General Jiang nodded slowly. Understood. We'll prepare alternatives, just in case honor isn't enough. Far above Earth, in his ship, Ambassador Zrelther composed his report to the Confederation Council. The humans seemed earnest, intelligent, and eager to join civilized society. Their questions showed appropriate respect for the codes. He had high hopes for them. He had no way of knowing that in that underground conference room, humanity was already preparing for a kind of war the Confederation had forgotten could exist. The kind of war that didn't care about honor. The kind of war that humanity had never stopped fighting, even against themselves. The kind of war that would teach the galaxy what terror really meant. 6 months passed peacefully. Humanity joined the Confederation with great ceremony. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Human students traveled to alien worlds to study. And alien scholars came to Earth. Everything seemed perfect. Then the Vexian Empire made a claim on the Kepler 442 system. The system sat at the edge of human colonial space. Humanity had surveyed it, marked it for future colonization, and established a small research station there. According to human law, it was their territory. But the Vexians had different ideas. Commander Vexler of the Dexian Imperial Fleet was a decorated warrior with 17 battle honors. His scales shimmered deep purple, the color of old blood and ancient victories. He had fought in 6 wars, all conducted with perfect honor, and his record was unblemished. The formal declaration of war arrived exactly as the codes required. 3 weeks' notice. The coordinates of the designated battle zone, an uninhabited asteroid field 2 light-years from the disputed system. The Vexians would bring their third fleet, approximately 40 warships. They expected humanity to bring an equivalent force dot in the Confederation chambers. Other species watched with interest. This would be humanity's first test. Would the young species uphold the codes? Would they fight with honor? Admiral Okoye commanded the Human Response Fleet. She was 53 years old, a veteran of the resource wars in the asteroid belt, and she had never lost a battle. She stood on the bridge of the UNSC Determination, watching her officers prepare for combat. "They're treating this like a sporting event," her tactical officer said, reviewing the Vexian deployment data. The aliens had provided detailed information about their fleet composition, command structure, and even which ship their commander would be on. The codes required transparency. "Let them," Okoye replied. "We'll follow their rules, mostly." The human fleet arrived at the designated coordinates right on schedule. 15 warships, smaller than the Vexian vessels but newer, fresh from Earth's shipyards. They took up positions across from the Vexian formation. The Vexian fleet was magnificent. 40 ships arranged in the traditional war wall formation, 3 rows deep, each vessel gleaming with polished armor. Banners streamed from every ship, proud declarations of honor and heritage. It was beautiful in its way, like watching an ancient parade. Commander Vexter opened the communication channel. His voice was formal, rehearsed. "Human Commander, I am Vexter of the Vexian Empire. We meet today to resolve our dispute over the Kepler 442 system. May honor guide our weapons. May courage strengthen our spirits. May the worthy side claim victory." Admiral Okoye responded in kind. "Commander Vexter, I am Admiral Okoye of the United Nations Space Command. We accept your challenge. May the battle be fair and decisive." Confederation observers watched from a safe distance. This was standard procedure. Independent witnesses to ensure both sides followed the codes. The battle began at the appointed time. The Vexian fleet advanced in perfect formation, their war wall moving forward like a single organism. It was the standard opening move, tested across thousands of battles over centuries. The front row would engage, the second row would provide support fire, and the third row would exploit any openings. The human fleet scattered. Ships broke in every direction, abandoning any pretense of formation. Some dove into the asteroid field. Others accelerated at angles the Vexians hadn't anticipated. 2 ships actually retreated, pulling back at full speed. "Dishonorable cowards," Vexter snarled. "They break formation before the first shot." But his second-in-command was more cautious. "Sir, perhaps this is an experience. They are new to proper warfare." The Vexian war wall adjusted, trying to maintain formation while tracking multiple targets. It was difficult. The formation was designed for opponents who fought the same way, not for enemies who scattered like frightened insects. Human ships began firing from unexpected angles. A destroyer emerged from behind an asteroid and launched missiles at the Vexian rearguard, then immediately retreated back into cover. Another ship positioned itself perpendicular to the Vexian formation and raked fire across their exposed flanks. "They hide behind rocks." Vexter was outraged. "They strike and retreat. Where is their courage?" The human ships didn't answer. They just kept moving, kept firing, kept refusing to engage in the clean, honorable way the Vexians expected. Then, Admiral Okoye did something the Vexians considered unthinkable. She ordered her ships to concentrate all fire on the Vexian command vessel. "Target the flagship," she ordered calmly. "All ships, all weapons. I want that ship disabled in the next 3 minutes." 12 human warships focused their fire on a single target. The Vexians tried to adjust, tried to protect their commander, but their formation was too rigid. Ships couldn't break ranks without abandoning the war wall entirely, and that would be dishonorable. Commander Vexther's ship shuddered under the assault. Shields failed. Armor cracked. Systems went offline. In 4 minutes, the pride of the Vexian fleet was crippled, drifting in space with minimal power. The Vexian formation collapsed. Without clear orders from their commander, individual captains had to make decisions. Some tried to maintain formation. Others broke off to protect the flagship. The elegant war wall became a confused mess. Human ships pressed the advantage ruthlessly. They picked off isolated vessels. They used the asteroids for cover, emerging only to strike and then disappearing again. They employed tactics that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated chaos. One Vexian captain tried to surrender honorably, broadcasting his intention and powering down his weapons as the codes required. The human ships accepted his surrender and moved on to other targets. At least they respected that much. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 32 Vexian ships were disabled or destroyed. The human fleet had lost 2 ships, with 4 more damaged but operational. The Confederation observers were stunned. They had expected the humans to lose their first battle. New species always did. The codes were complex, and mastery took practice. But the humans hadn't just won. They had dominated. Admiral Okoye accepted Commander Vexther's formal surrender. She was polite, even gracious. She followed the codes for treatment of prisoners. But when Vexther asked her why the humans fought so dishonorably, she tilted her head. "We followed your codes," she said. "We declared war formally. We met you at the designated location. We didn't attack civilian targets. We accepted surrenders. We did everything required. But you hid. You scattered. You targeted my command ship." Vexther's voice shook with emotion. "You fought like we wanted to win?" Okoye finished. "Commander, your codes tell us what we can't do. They don't tell us how we must do everything else. You expected us to fight like you. That was your mistake." Back in the Confederation chambers, emergency meetings were called. The human tactics had been analyzed and reanalyzed. Technically, the humans hadn't broken any specific code, but they had violated the spirit of honorable combat. They had turned a dignified military engagement into something chaotic and brutal. The Vexian ambassador demanded sanctions. The humans must be taught proper conduct. They won through trickery and cowardice. But others weren't so sure. The Valorians, led by Ambassador Zrelther, advocated for patience. "They are young. They don't understand our ways yet. We should send instructors, help them learn the proper forms of combat." A vote was called. The Confederation decided to give humanity one more chance. But the Vexian Empire would not let the insult stand. They called for allies. 2 other species agreed to help teach the humans a lesson in humility. On Earth, Admiral Okoye briefed the Security Council. "They're angry. They think we cheated, even though we followed every rule. They're going to come at us harder next time." General Zhang smiled grimly. "Good. Let them come. We were holding back this time, trying to be polite. If they want to see what humans can really do, we'll show them." Secretary General Santos looked worried. "We need to be careful. We can't afford to make enemies of the entire Confederation." "Then they shouldn't have taught us their rules," Zhang replied. "Now we know exactly how far we can push before we actually break them. And trust me, there's a lot of room to work with." In space above Earth, new ships were already under construction. But these ships were different, darker, harder to see, equipped with systems that the Confederation had never needed because they fought with honor. Humanity was preparing for a different kind of war. The kind they had always known. The kind where winning was the only rule that really mattered. The second declaration of war came 3 months later. This time, the Vexian Empire brought allies. The Kryn Collective and the Arth Kingdom had joined them, offended by humanity's dishonorable conduct. Together, they would teach these upstart humans the proper way to fight. The declaration was formal and precise. 3 full fleets, over 120 warships combined, would meet the human forces at the designated coordinates in the Sigma Draconis sector. The date and time were specified. The codes would be followed to the letter, and this time, the humans would learn respect. General Zhang read the declaration and laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. They're bringing everything to one location. They've told us exactly when they'll be there. They've even specified which ships carry their command staff. He looked up at his staff officers. They really don't understand what kind of species they're dealing with. Sir, we need to respond according to the codes, Colonel Ramos reminded him. We have to acknowledge the declaration and confirm our participation. Oh, we'll respond, Zhang said. Send them our confirmation. Tell them we'll meet them at the designated coordinates. Tell them we look forward to an honorable engagement. He turned to his communications officer. And then activate Operation Ghost Protocol. What happened next would be discussed in Confederation circles for generations. The Allied fleet arrived at Sigma Draconis right on schedule. 123 warships in perfect formation, representing 3 species and centuries of military tradition. Commander Vexter was there again, his honor demanding he face the humans personally. Beside him were Fleetmaster Kryn and Lord Earth, equally decorated warriors. They waited at the coordinates. And waited. And waited. The human fleet was late. By 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour. The Allied commanders grew impatient. Had the humans surrendered? Had they fled in fear? Then they received Admiral Okoy's message. Her face appeared on their screens, and she was smiling. Thank you for gathering your forces in one convenient location. Your cooperation is appreciated. Before Vexter could respond, the alerts began. Not from the designated battle zone. From everywhere else. Human strike forces. Ships painted in adaptive black that made them nearly invisible against space emerged from seemingly nowhere. But they didn't attack the Allied fleet. They attacked supply depots 3 systems away. They hit the shipyards where the Vexian fleet had been constructed. They struck military communication stations, always during the night cycle when personnel were at minimal staffing. What is this? Vexter roared. We are here. The battle is here. They violate the codes. But his second-in-command checked the data carefully. Sir, they're not attacking civilian targets. Only military installations. And technically, the codes don't require all forces to be at the designated battle zone. They just require that a battle occur there if both sides are present. At the designated coordinates, something else was happening. Automated defense platforms, left by human forces weeks earlier, activated. They weren't warships, so technically they didn't violate the requirement for human forces to be present. They were just equipment, left in international space, defending a position. The platforms opened fire. They weren't trying to win a battle. They were just there to make the Allied fleet commit to the engagement, to keep them in place while the real attacks happened elsewhere. Fleetmaster Kryn was the first to understand. It's a diversion. They never intended to fight us here. This entire battle is a distraction. But that's... Lord Orth struggled for words. That's not how war works. Across Vexian space, human special operations teams were conducting raids. Small groups of soldiers, dropped by stealth ships, hitting military targets with surgical precision. They attacked command centers, disabled communication arrays, sabotaged fuel supplies. They moved at night, used electronic warfare to blind sensors, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. One team infiltrated a Vexian military academy, not to harm the cadets, but to broadcast a message directly into the base's internal network. The message showed human soldiers, faces covered, speaking in perfect Vexian. Your commanders sent your fleets away from your worlds. They followed old rules while we made new ones. You are not safe. You have never been safe. Surrender now, or learn what humanity does to enemies who refuse. It was psychological warfare on a scale the Confederation had never seen. The message wasn't true, not exactly. Human forces weren't targeting civilians, weren't planning to attack Vexian cities. But the fear was real. The uncertainty was real. And fear was its own weapon. Back at the designated battle zone, the Allied fleet finally destroyed the last automated platform. It had taken them 6 hours. They had won the battle, technically. But the victory felt hollow. Commander Vexter received the reports from home. 23 military installations damaged or destroyed. Supply lines disrupted. Communication networks compromised. And worst of all, the civilian population was panicking. They had been told war was honorable, contained, and safe. Now they learned that human forces could strike anywhere, anytime. This is terrorism, Vexter said quietly. Not warfare, terrorism. The Confederation Council convened an emergency session. The debates were heated. The humans had technically followed the codes again. They hadn't attacked civilians. They hadn't used banned weapons. They had confirmed their participation in the battle. But what they had done felt wrong in ways the codes had never anticipated. Ambassador Relther looked older now, tired. I don't understand. We gave them the codes. We explained the principles. Why do they fight this way? The human ambassador, Jennifer Walsh, was summoned to explain. She stood before the council, a small woman facing beings from a dozen worlds, some of them twice her size. But her voice was steady. You asked us to follow your codes, and we did. Every rule, every restriction, we followed them. But you made a mistake. You assumed that following rules meant thinking like you. You assumed that honor meant fighting stupid. Stupid? Ambassador Relther's crest flared in anger. We fight with dignity. You fight with predictability, Jennifer corrected. You tell your enemies where you'll be, when you'll be there, and what you'll bring. You paint your ships in bright colors and fly banners that announce your presence. You attack in formations that haven't changed in centuries. You make yourselves easy targets because you think that's honorable. She pulled up a holographic display. Let me show you something about human history. Images appeared. Ancient battles, medieval warfare, trenches from World War I, bombers over cities, guerrilla fighters in jungles. We fought each other for 10,000 years. We tried honor codes dozens of times. Every single time, they failed when the stakes got high enough. You know why? Because the side that followed the rules died, and the side that didn't won. Then, you are barbarians, Lord Orth declared. Exactly as we suspected. Maybe, Jennifer agreed. Or maybe we're just honest about what war really is. You've made war into a game with rules and referees. You've forgotten that war is about killing people and breaking things until one side gives up. You've had the luxury of forgetting because you've never faced an enemy who wanted to destroy you completely. She paused, letting her words sink in. We haven't had that luxury. We know what real war looks like. And yes, it's ugly. It's terrifying. It's everything your codes were designed to prevent. But it's effective. The council chamber was silent. Finally, a representative from the Kryn Collective spoke. What do you want from us? End the war, Jennifer said simply. Recognize our claim to Kepler 442. Accept that humanity fights differently than you do. And that's not going to change. We'll follow your codes, but we'll follow them our way. Or you can keep fighting, and we'll show you things that will make what we've already done look gentle." It wasn't a bluff. Everyone in the chamber knew it. The vote took 3 days. In the end, the council agreed to humanity's terms. The war ended. The Vexian Empire withdrew its claim. And humanity gained something more valuable than territory. They gained a reputation. But the cost was high. Trust between humanity and the Confederation was damaged, perhaps permanently. The other species looked at humans differently now. Not as younger brothers and sisters to be welcomed, but as something dangerous. Something that smiled and shook hands while hiding knives behind their backs. On Earth, Secretary General Santos met with her military commanders. "We won, but at what price? They're afraid of us now." General Zhang nodded slowly. "Good. Fear prevents wars better than honor ever did. They wanted to teach us a lesson about civilized behavior. Instead, we taught them a lesson about survival. Is that really what we want?" Santos asked. "To be the monsters of the galaxy?" "We're not monsters," Zhang replied. "We're just the only species that remembers what monsters are really like. And sometimes, that's what the galaxy needs." 2 years passed. The galaxy was different now. Humanity had earned its place in the Confederation, but not the way anyone had expected. Trade continued. Diplomatic relations remained stable, but there was always an undercurrent of tension. Fear mixed with respect, curiosity mixed with caution. The codes of honorable warfare remained in effect. No one had changed the rules, but everyone understood them differently now. Humanity had found every loophole, every ambiguity, every interpretation that the original authors had never imagined. And they had done it while following the letter of the law. Other species began studying human military history. They read about Sun Tzu and Clausewitz, about blitzkrieg and guerrilla warfare, about espionage and psychological operations. What they found disturbed them. Humanity had weaponized concepts the Confederation had never considered. Deception as strategy, fear as a tool, chaos as a tactic. Some species tried to adapt. They studied human methods, attempted to incorporate irregular warfare into their own doctrines. But it felt wrong to them, like learning to lie after a lifetime of honesty. The cultural shift was too vast, too fundamental. Then came the Ratchik invasion. The Ratchik were not part of the Confederation. They came from unknown space, a species that had evolved in a harsh stellar nursery where resources were scarce and competition was lethal. They had built their empire through conquest, taking what they needed and destroying what they didn't. They had never heard of the codes of honorable warfare. They wouldn't have cared if they had. The Ratchik fleet appeared at the edge of Confederation space without warning. No declaration of war. No designated battle zones. No honor at all. They simply attacked, overwhelming the border colonies with brutal efficiency. Orbital bombardments killed millions. Survivors were taken as slaves. Entire worlds went dark. The Confederation mobilized, but their response was slow. They tried to follow the codes, tried to designate battle zones, and issue formal challenges. The Ratchik ignored them and kept advancing. Within 6 weeks, 12 colony worlds had fallen. Ambassador Zrelther called an emergency session of the council. His crest, once so proud and vibrant, seemed faded now. "We are losing. Our fleets cannot adapt quickly enough. The Ratchik fight without honor, and we do not know how to respond." The representatives from various species looked at each other with growing despair. Centuries of civilized warfare had not prepared them for an enemy that refused to be civilized. Their elegant formations were slaughtered. Their designated battle zones were ignored. Their formal challenges went unanswered. Finally, a junior representative from the Kryn Collective spoke up. Her voice was hesitant, almost ashamed. "There's one species that might know how to fight this kind of enemy." Everyone knew who she meant. the debate was fierce. Some argued that asking humanity for help would be admitting defeat, acknowledging that barbaric methods were superior to civilized ones. Others pointed out that they were already defeated. That pride was worthless if everyone was dead or enslaved. In the end, survival won over honor. Ambassador Zrelther was chosen to make the request. He traveled to Earth personally, something he had not done since the first contact 2 years earlier. Secretary General Santos met him in the same reception hall where they had first shaken hands. Zrelther looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "We need your help." The words clearly pained him. Santos nodded slowly. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, Zrelther explained the situation. The Ratchik numbers, their tactics, their advance through Confederation space. He didn't try to hide anything, didn't try to minimize the disaster. When he finished, he met Santos's eyes directly. "We judged you harshly for how you fight. We called you dishonorable, barbaric, and worse. We were wrong. Not about your methods being brutal, but about whether brutality is always wrong. The Ratchik are teaching us what you tried to tell us. There are enemies who will not be stopped by honor. There are situations where civilization is a luxury we cannot afford." Santos considered her response carefully. "What exactly are you asking for?" "We want human forces to join the defense. We want your commanders to teach us how to fight like you fight. We want—" He paused, the words difficult. "We want you to do to the Ratchik what you did to us, without holding back this time. You understand what that means? We won't follow the codes against an enemy that doesn't recognize them. We'll do things that will horrify you." "We are already horrified," Zrelther said quietly. "By watching our people die because we clung to principles our enemy doesn't share. If you can stop the Ratchik, we will accept the cost." Santos made the call. Within a week, human fleets were moving toward the front lines. But they didn't just bring warships. They brought something the Confederation had never seen: an integrated military doctrine designed for total war. General Zhang took command of the joint forces. His first meeting with the Confederation military leaders was blunt. "Everything you know about warfare, forget it. The Ratchik don't care about your honor. They don't care about your rules. They care about winning, and they're very good at it. So we're gonna beat them at their own game." The human strategy was comprehensive and ruthless. They started with intelligence gathering, sending stealth ships deep into Ratchik-held territory to study their logistics, command structure, and supply lines. They identified weaknesses, patterns, and vulnerabilities. Then they struck. Human forces didn't meet the Ratchik in open battle. Instead, they attacked everywhere the Ratchik weren't looking. Supply convoys disappeared. Communication relays were destroyed. Commanders were assassinated by special operations teams that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. The Ratchik had expected resistance, but not like this. They had never fought an enemy that refused to be where they were supposed to be. Human forces used hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and traps. They mined the space lanes the Ratchik used. They hacked into Ratchik communication networks and sent false orders. They broadcasted propaganda that made Ratchik soldiers question their commanders. On one captured world, a human special forces team infiltrated the Ratchik occupation headquarters. They didn't kill anyone. Instead, they disabled the entire security system, left evidence of their presence everywhere, and departed unseen. The message was clear: we can reach you whenever we want. The psychological impact was devastating. Ratchik forces began to see threats everywhere. They became paranoid, defensive, and hesitant. Their advance slowed, then stopped, then reversed. Confederation forces, learning from their human allies, began to adapt. Valorian ships started using camouflage. Kryn commanders learned to set ambush. Arath soldiers practiced night raids. It was difficult for them, uncomfortable, but necessity drove them forward. Admiral Okoye coordinated a major operation against the Ratchet main fleet. She didn't challenge them to honorable combat. Instead, she lured them into a nebula filled with human minds and automated weapons platforms. When the Ratchet emerged, battered and confused, Confederation forces were waiting. The battle was brutal and short. The Ratchet fleet was destroyed. Their supply lines were cut. Their occupied worlds were isolated. Within 3 months of human intervention, the invasion was over. The aftermath was complicated. The Confederation had won, but the victory tasted strange. They had abandoned their principles, fought without honor, and survived because of it. Some saw this as a tragedy. Others saw it as growth. A ceremony was held to honor the joint forces. Ambassador Relther stood before the assembled representatives and spoke. We called humanity barbaric. We called them uncivilized. We were not entirely wrong. But we were not entirely right either. They showed us that civilization is not just about how you act in peace. It is also about how you survive against those who would destroy you. He turned to face the human delegation. We judge you for knowing how to fight without honor. We should have thanked you for knowing when it was necessary. The Ratchet taught us what you tried to tell us. The codes of honorable warfare are beautiful, but they only work when everyone agrees to them. Against an enemy that rejects honor, honor alone is not enough. Santa stepped forward. The codes aren't wrong. They represent an ideal worth striving for. In a perfect galaxy, everyone would follow them. But this isn't a perfect galaxy. Sometimes you need diplomacy and honor. Sometimes you need trade and cooperation. And sometimes, when everything else fails, you need soldiers who know how to win ugly. The Confederation Council voted on a new resolution. The codes would remain in effect for conflicts between member species. But against external threats, against enemies who refuse to recognize the codes, the Confederation would fight to win by any means necessary. They called it the human exception, though humanity insisted it be called the survival doctrine. Years later, humanity's role in the Confederation had evolved. They were no longer the feared outsiders. They were the specialists, the ones you called when honor wasn't enough. Other species handled diplomacy, trade, and peaceful exploration. Humanity handled the threats that threatened everyone. It wasn't the role humanity had hoped for when they first reached for the stars, but it was the role they were suited for, forged by 10,000 years of fighting themselves. They were the galaxy's reluctant warriors, the ones who remembered that sometimes survival required sacrificing ideals. And in a galaxy that was discovering it wasn't as safe as they had believed, that made humanity the most valuable allies anyone could have. The codes of honorable warfare endured. But now everyone understood they were a privilege of peace, not a guarantee of safety. And when that peace was threatened, when honor failed and survival hung in the balance, the galaxy knew exactly who to call. The species that had never forgotten what war really was. The species that delivered not honor, but victory. The species that, when necessary, delivered terror.